So those of you that are aware of things going on in pop culture and social media know that a lot of people are running away from Twitter right now. I find still, I check it from time to time, and there's one of my favorite feeds that I've followed for a while. I follow lots of news channels just to keep tabs on what's going on in kind of those free-dried little small snippets. And one of my favorites is an AP feed that talks about stories that might be known as oddities or impossibilities. And one of these stories came forward a while back, and it just was coming to my mind again today. Marlene Wilson, 44, was a citizen of Kansas, and she had been cleaning her house when she found herself suffering from a heart attack. And so her 16-year-old daughter heard her struggling and immediately called 911. So they whisked her off into the ambulance, and she found herself slipping into death, at least as the indications on the machines that she was hooked up to were showing. And the daughter got so frantic, just trying to find any way that she could grasp for a last hope for her mother, not knowing if her mother would be able to get to the hospital at all to be able to be revived and saved. And so she did what any 16-year-old at the time would do. She just got out her phone and said, "Hey Siri, play Justin Bieber." And then the beats started to go from her phone and fill the whole place. Probably not her mother's chosen music on the daily, but all of a sudden after this music came on, and as the beeping of flatlining continued to happen, there was a turn and a sign of life. And her mother opened her eyes and came just with a big smile on her face, even as they continued to bring her for her eventual healing at a hospital in a city next door. And so she said, "I just want to basically thank Justin for being my guardian angel in this moment." Now, I don't know about you, my skeptic radar goes up really high on this one. Is it a miracle? Or is it not? I love following these quirky stories, the things that just feel like they are otherworldly or might be found on a spoof website instead of a real happening. Some of them are claimed as modern-day miracles. Jesus' face materializing on the face of toasted Wonder Bread, or Jesus' face appearing on the inside of an interstate overpass. You've seen these stories. Some of our own miracle stories that we encounter through the news or the stories of others are the sort for which we can easily offer a scientific or rational alternative explanation, or at times explain it away as chance to protect ourselves from our own heart's disappointment, getting in the way in some moments of our own miracle that might be in store. A lot of us as religious folks think that we can help ourselves and help others, insisting over and over again how important it is to just believe, as if that reality, that act were something that one could conjure by force or will. But to this, Rachel Held Evans, in her book Inspired, lifts up the words of Jan Lynn to be helpful to this issue. And Jan says, "A miracle is a moment when God acts because God is free to act. We can affirm that God is always free to act without also having to explain why God doesn't act in ways we believe God should. Faith in God points only to possibilities, not necessities. So, calling an unusual event that maybe you wanted to happen or believed should have happened didn't, to believe in miracles is simply another way of saying that you and I believe in God. Miracles. I'm a believer in miracles. Maybe you are too, or at least you want to be. Miracles come in normal, everyday happenings and normal, everyday people. Somehow a way opens, and limited rations begin multiplying like fishes and loaves. A staff can hit a rock, and all of a sudden, water can pour from it. Centuries-long tribal suspicions melt away over a meal, as the stories say. And storms, natural and man-made, suddenly calmed by the presence of Jesus in the Gospels. There are other signs that we see today of people being in the exactly right place and right time, donations and care packages arriving when we least expect but most need them, scarce chemo drugs suddenly becoming available for a patient holding on to her last hope. I don't know about you, but the people in my life who seem most convinced of the reality of miracles are the ones that are on the front lines of the Bible's miracles that we see all of the time. And Rachel reminds us of this too. Hospital chaplains, food pantry directors, addiction counselors, relief and development workers like our mission team will be this week in a way, nursing home volunteers and foster parents. All of these and so many more witness a whole lot of heartbreak and unmet needs and seemingly unanswered and impossible prayers. They're neck deep in it. But their proximity to the suffering and the marginalized means that they catch a glimpse sometimes of the miraculous. And we can too, if only we look. So our story today zooms in not just on one person, but on two women. One whose condition Mark describes in great detail with basically four things that are a reality for her that I want to kind of condense down for you. She had been with a flow of blood for 12 years. She had suffered under the care of many doctors. She had spent all of her resources, and she had not benefited, but had grown worse instead for the treatment. So awful as this condition already was, it was made worse by the fact that the law prevented any kind of physical contact with this woman for her continual condition, rendering her perpetually untouchable, cut off from her husband, cut off from her community and her temple where she found solace and connection with others. Perhaps she heard echoes of stories about Jesus healing a man with leprosy, because in this story, she lets her mind tapes that say, am I even worth trying to reach for one bit of his cloak? And convinces herself that she can. And she has the courage to join a large crowd and says to herself, if I just touch one bit of his clothes, I will be healed. She too is at the end of her rope, and so she stretches out her arm, and in an act of defiance to everything around her that says that she shouldn't, touches Jesus' cloak with her fingertips. A tender touch that completely changed a life. The other is about a young woman who has died, and her father directly begs Jesus to bring life to her again. And this is where I think we see what Mark is trying to do in this kind of enmeshing and almost comparing the stories of these two, because the girl, you see, was 12 years old, And she had lived, as we can see from the context of the story, you have to dig into it a little bit, but she had lived affluently for 12 years and was on the verge of becoming a woman, having the very situation that the older woman wanted to cast away. Anytime I read the Gospel of Mark, and I just kind of want to throw these resources to you sometimes, my favorite book about the Gospel of Mark has been and probably will always be Binding the Strong Man by Ched Myers. Even after 35 years, it still rings true to every single cultural situation as it connects to Holy Scripture. And in it, he helps to kind of reveal for us this number of 12, as one lived affluently for 12 and one suffered mercilessly for 12. It symbolizes the 12 tribes of Israel and helped us see that within the family of Israel, these daughters, even in their different ages and different circumstances, represent the advantaged and the impoverished and everyone in between. And because of the inequity that we can see, the gap between their experiences, this reality of all of the Jewish people as Jesus came to that side, Jesus was pointing to their being on the verge of death if they didn't see the problem with this. Jesus' healing journey has to always take a detour to stop to listen to the pain of the excluded, however that exclusion shows up. Only when the outcast woman is restored to daughterhood, this older woman becoming one cared for by the community again, and the daughter of the synagogue being restored to life, it is that faith that we, as the privileged, even in this time, have to learn from the ones that struggle. Because it's easy for us, even for me, for you, to find ourselves explaining away miracles because it requires us to humble ourselves in awe of God's capacity in such a deep and abiding way. It makes us feel small, or at least maybe I'm the only one. This story shows us a central way of God's dream for us, which Jesus will later also tell. The last will be first, and the least will be greatest. Because they see situations where their faith is enough to reach out or to actually ask for what they need, rather than suppressing it all down and saying, it's okay. It's okay. And robbing ourselves of the miracle, of the abundant life that we can receive and live. The miracles of Jesus aren't magic tricks, Rachel says, designed to awe prospective converts, nor are they tests from the past meant to sort true believers from doubters. They are instructions. They are challenges. They are visions, even windows, showing us what to do, where to expand our love for others, and how to hope when we've lost the capacity to hope. Dallas Willard put it this way: we don't have to believe something by merely saying we believe it, or even when we believe that we believe it. We believe something when we act as if it were true. So perhaps a better question for us than do you and I believe in miracles or these oddities that can come on even a Twitter feed, maybe the different question is, am I acting like I do? Am I including people who are excluded? Am I feeding? Am I caring for the sick? Am I holding hands with those that need love to show up in their lives? Am I behaving as though life is more than a meaningless, chaotic mess, that there is some order in whatever storm we inhabit? I've told you before that one of the most formative experiences I've had is being a chaplain at Northwestern Hospital in downtown Chicago for a while. And I was caring for folks that were going through long bouts of cancer and chemo treatment. But every night, 3-4 nights or so, I served on call and had the opportunity to see the vast issues and encounters with people in every floor and in every walk of life. One of the ones I encountered is one that's seared in my memory of a young woman who birthed a stillborn child. At least they thought that it was stillborn. She had been whisked into the hospital and found herself in a place where she had birthed a child, and all the doctors and nurses had whisked the baby away and had already made the pronouncement without her even being able to hold this sweet child. And I found myself still in the gap and in the mix of that, seeing her longing to have that chance to reach out and to touch. And then finally we brought the baby over and stood by her side as she held it, and she continued to hold this child to her chest and to her skin, to her warmth, not just for minutes, but she insisted that that child be held for more than an hour. And she put her own milk to that child's mouth, again believing that something might happen if only she continued to offer herself in the only simple ways that she could as a new mother. And that baby too opened its eyes and began to breathe in a way that all of the doctors looked and kept shaking their heads, saying, "It's impossible." But there are moments when God meets us in human flesh at just the right time. These stories remind us of who we are. So what ways is God calling you to reach a little farther, to touch a new reality, even a dream that seems possible? Or to stand up, to break the bounds around you, even the bonds of life and seeming death? May we all believe and even be the miracle in store for your life or for the life of another this day and always. Amen.